Good afternoon. This is Elaine Jackson, the Holistic Project Manager from Holistic Project Management Consulting. We're here today to really help those of you who are struggling with passing the PMP exam, those of you who are struggling as to what program to select, what are the options that are out there, what's important, what's not important. As you well know, this exam, the PMP certification exam, is a deal breaker for many project managers. Some project managers, and this might apply to you, if project managers are not able to get jobs or get even job interviews because they lack some of the certifications that are seen as trendy or popular or very much needed by their next job. So I suggest that you take some really good notes. Please, in the chat, press the orange button to see the chat feature. Type your questions in there. If I miss your question, make sure that you put it in again so that you can make sure that I catch it. Anything that we don't cover within the hour, I will answer and send you some follow-up. But certainly I want to make sure that everyone gets true value on today's presentation. And just a note of I guess maybe a warning is to let you know that at the end of the presentation I will be making an unbelievable offer in terms of a training program that might be good for you for these summer hours. If it's not good for you, that's fine. You can pass the information off to someone else. But Holistic Project Management is a business that's been in existence for over 10 years, and we've helped hundreds of individuals prepare and pass their PMP exam. So we're looking forward to being able to help you too if you choose to have us as your coach and as your trainer. So here's a little bit about us. We're in good standing with PMI since 2005. We have YouTube videos, all kinds of information that will add value to your training process. Take some time to look at our radio program. We have a blog talk radio for project managers, and lots of great information is shared there from project managers doing green project management, project managers doing agile. We have some new project managers coming on that are going to be talking about Scrum. So we have a lot of information that is of value, plus some of those presentations actually have links for a lot of freebies. So make time to sit through the presentations and listen. They're only about 25 to 30 minutes long. We have a meetup group. We're part of the Better Business Bureau, have an A rating, which is pretty good rating considering there are companies out there with ratings that are nowhere near A. So we're pretty proud of that. Part of Chamber of Commerce and engineering societies. So we're quite involved, and some of you may have found us on LinkedIn. So I want to encourage you to stay in contact. Make sure you're at the level 1 contact with us on LinkedIn so that, number one, you see all the posts that I put out there. You see the updates. You see the specials, any notifications that come from PMI. I also work as a volunteer for the Community of Practice, scheduling Community of Practice for PMI. So I'm the communications lead. I've been doing that for a little over a year. So I'm quite involved, and I try to keep my finger on the pulse of everything that's happening in project management that would benefit project managers. So in short, I'm probably the best person you could probably ever ask a question to, because if I don't know where it is, I certainly know where to point you to get the information. So take a look at this picture. This came from somebody on the web who allowed me to use this picture, and it was him doing some sort of a survival run, and at the end of the run he had to run through fire. So is this what your PMP process is looking like? You're running and you're just going through fire drill after fire drill, and nothing seems to be working. So, and the problem may be that there is so much information out there on the web that you're getting sidetracked by things that say free or low price, big discount, pick us, we have the best deal, or Groupons that say $99. Then you take the program and you realize, then you run and take the test. You fail the test. Then you realize after you take another training program that there was lots of missing information. So these are some of the things that some of the project managers are dealing with, spending money over and over because they picked the wrong school based on the wrong criteria. I've done some research with some brain specialists, some psychologists, and we've identified that the human brain does not learn. There's no way you could go to medical school in a week. There's no way that you could sit there and take in massive amounts of information and turn around a week or two later and ace a test of intensity. So, and if you've never done that before, if you're a person that can read a book and just leaf through the book and immediately you've captured everything, well, then maybe a boot camp or a really fast-paced program is a program for you. Or maybe you failed a program in the past and now you need a refresher, then a boot camp is for you. But if you're a person that needs to take your time and read and understand the material, a boot camp may not be the best way to spend your money for your PMP training. Here are the knowledge areas that we will be covering for all of the training classes. Even if you're taking a short review program, we make sure that we cover all of these areas because you're going to be tested in all of these areas. The exam is a 4-hour exam. When we finish training our students, they are able to finish the 4-hour exam. They're able to finish it in 2 hours, and their scores are in the high 80s consistently. That is what it's going to take for you to pass your exam. So if you're studying, you say, well, you know, my scores are around 60 something, and I think I'm just barely making it. I'm going to take a chance. Your whole demeanor, your whole attitude during the testing environment is different. You will be scared. You'll be nervous. You'll have a lot of anxiety. That adds to the fact that you'll get a lower score. You'll make some mistakes. So if your scores are low to begin with, and then it's compounded by the fact that you have these anxieties and these issues that will happen, and it happens to everyone, your score will drop. And so if you're in the 60s, it's going to drop into the 50s. You are now in a range that you will not be awarded the PMP certification. So think about what your attitude is towards learning. Think about how much time you have. If you have a lot of requirements from your job, you have a family, maybe a new home, maybe young children at home, maybe your parents have moved in with you, a lot of stuff going on, and now you're going to sit and study. Think about how much time your family or your job is going to allow you to give you space to study. Those are important factors that you may not have considered. And now you're thinking about, yeah, I'll take a course, and every time you go to study, someone is asking you to mow the lawn. Could you help with the barbecue? Could you help take somebody to the hairdresser or down the street to pick up something from the store? So think about the constraints on your time, and think about how you're going to gain back some of your time for studying, because without that time for studying, you could be the best student ever. You could have the best coach ever. And if you don't have time to study, you're not going to finish the program. So these are some of the programs that we have that I want to talk about tonight. In talking about my programs, you're going to pick up some tips on, wow, this program does that. And you're going to be thinking, wow, is this a program that I could use? How can I gain information from this to make my decision about how I'm going to move about my training? How am I going to move myself forward? Can I take is a 10-week program too long or too short? Is a 5-day or 8-week program, 2-week program? You need to think about the timing. Right now, we have graduations going on throughout everywhere in the United States, right? We had in the month of May, there were like first communions and things like that, and then maybe some college grads. But now in June, you have all the high school and the elementary schools. So you may be getting invited to graduation parties and Father's Day Sunday, so Father's Day celebration. This is not a time when you can really say, I'm not going to come out of my office, and you lock the door and you stay in studying. Your family's expecting some kind of balance. So as a person studying for your exam, make sure that you understand what holidays are coming up, anniversaries, events. You can't plan. If a funeral happens, you have to then decide, okay, I'm not going to study for a week or two. That's going to be downtime that I have to account for. And also, if you have emergencies, PMI will make concessions for you. If you have your exam scheduled and something health-wise or catastrophic happens, PMI will make accommodations for you. You just have to let them know, and it certainly would not be like that morning. So on that note, if you pick your exam day, you say, well, I really want to take my exam on a Sunday. I want to take it on a Monday. Or not a Sunday or a Saturday. If something should happen and you need to call PMI for help or backup, or there's a problem at the testing center, you can't reach anybody on a Saturday or a Sunday. So you need to think about that. If you're a person that likes to make sure no matter what happens, you have a way to call somebody, you will not be able to make a call to anybody for any help on a Saturday or a Sunday. I have had students that had issues that happened and they just had to suffer through it. Issues like not being allowed to go to the bathroom, not being allowed to write a brain dump sheet, which is something you'll learn about when you sign up with training with us, is that's an important piece of the whole study program, is being able to mind map all of the information and be able to pull it together and remember it in your head so that during the exam it becomes a little bit easier for you to access key formulas and theories. We also offer Agile and CAPM training. The CAPM is very similar to the PMP. There are less requirements, less hours, and less questions on the exam. So if you're considering the CAPM, you really need to talk with me. Let me look at your resume. It could be that you're just nervous about being prepared, but had you taken the time to have somebody look over the requirements and map them to what you've already done, you may see that you already have what you need to do the PMP. Okay, so don't just put yourself in the bottom category, because the CAPM, I have not heard of anyone getting a job or that a manager says, oh my God, you're CAPM, why don't we hire you right away? The CAPM, they say, well, that's great, you're working towards it, but it's nothing like having the PMP certification. So before we get into each of the different programs, I wanted to talk with you. Hopefully you guys can see this. I know it's kind of tight, but I wanted to show you a comparison. And DFY, done for you, DWY, done with you, DBY, done by you. So this done for you is a program where we have to do a lot of the work, and basically we hold you by your hand and we pull you through the program, and you know, you can go kicking and screaming. We don't really care. You say, I need to pass this exam and I need your help, and I need coaching, and I have problems with math, and my wife, she doesn't let me have time to study. We take over and we tell you what to do, when to do it, what to say, and we just take you right through the whole program. And even though you may be complaining, at the end you're like, well, I did complain, but I just wanted somebody to hear me out. So these are the different programs. You can do a 10-week program, 5-week program. You can do a boot camp 1-week program. It all depends on you. If you have to get back to work before July, and I'm saying July because after Labor Day, after July 4th, hiring starts to slow down in July. And August, if you get hired in August, it's because a company has really a lot of problems. But most times companies just slow down in the month of August, and then they start to pick up again after Labor Day in September, maybe the second week in September. So it's important that you think about when you want to get this PMP accomplished. If you need to get the PMP done by next week, that's going to be a major stress on you. I've had people come to me and say, I need to get this PMP done in 2 weeks. I'm like, hey, okay, get ready for some pain, but we can do it. And I put them through it, and they were able to do it. But we're not friends now. And I guess maybe that doesn't really matter to some people. You don't care if you're friends with the person afterwards, just as long as they get you through the program, kicking and screaming, yelling, whatever. I do tons of follow-up Some of you may have already been around me a while and see the amount of mail. The mail is meaningful mail. It's not, hey, look at this joke, look at this picture. I don't have time for that. The information I send is primarily related to the exam, passing the exam, being motivated for the exam. So if anybody has any questions on what they see on this screen, please put it in the chat so that I can make sure I address this as we move forward. What's coming later on in the presentation, we're going to be answering some PMP mock questions to give you an idea of what it's like to answer questions. I'm going to share some tips. There are tons of tips out there, and so we're going to share some top tips that you may have never considered, probably no one ever told you. And for those of you on the call who are females, we have special issues female-wise that we have to worry about that happens on a monthly basis. Don't want to get into the details, but that's something that nobody ever addresses. What if it is that it's that special time of the month and you have to go and take your exam on that day? So those are things you need to consider when you're looking at the date of the exam. And for guys, you know, if you have to help with caregiving and your exam is 8 a.m., you can't take time to drop your kid at the daycare, which is 7:30, but it's half an hour or an hour away. If you get to the testing center late, guess what? You lost your exam. The money's gone. You cannot walk into that testing center late. You can walk in early, but if you walk in late, it is up to the discretion of the people at the Prometric Center whether they let you take that test or not. And many times they will tell you no, because if you're late, the next person that comes to take that seat 4 hours later has to wait. They have those seats jam-packed all day long up until 11 o'clock at night. And so the bottom line is, if you come late and somebody else is like, well, I came early, they're going to say, hey, the seat's open, take your seat. And when you show up late, or you don't have your ID, or you don't have proper documentation, you will lose your test date. And there's nothing PMI can do about it. They give you the regulations of don't carry heavy jewelry or big watches that look like they can pop open with a calculator in it. All these kinds of things, you know, we go over with our students on the do's and what not to do to prepare for exam day. If it is you go to the testing center and you have, like one guy, he was totally ready to pass the exam. But he wore these pants that were cargo pants, which have little pockets all over it. A grown man wearing pants would have pockets all down the sides, and if he had little trinkets, little good luck charms and stuff, they made him take everything out of his pocket. He became so angry and felt so violated, he couldn't even focus on the exam and failed the exam. So these are things you need to realize, that the day of the exam, you need to be totally prepared. And don't let yourself be pulled into a situation where you might be searched. Some people are actually searched with a wand in some, like California, Atlanta, and I don't even know, probably New York. They are searching people when they go in. So you need to expect cameras to be trained on you, and that they will search you to make sure you're going in there and have the right ID so that you don't have any problems. So we will come back to this screen. We have a special for Father's Day weekend, but I'm not going to focus on that. I think you guys want to get into some of the questions. But these are our programs. Does anybody have any questions on what they see on the screen? If you can put something in the chat and say no or yes. And I see we have quite a few people on the call, which is wonderful. So does anybody have any questions so far? I'll leave the chat box open so I can see it for now. So there's a 35-hour program doing it for you. So what we're doing is holding your hand. Now you may say, my God, I'm a grown man. I'm a grown woman. I don't need anyone to hold my hand. First week into the class, oh my God, this is a lot of stuff. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. How do I remember all of that stuff? So what we do, we don't over coddle you, but we make sure that, number one, you know what is expected in terms of homework. If you don't do your homework, we check every single week. So, okay, you didn't do your homework. We ask every week. So you know when class is coming up, oh my God, she's going to ask me that crazy question again. Yeah, I have to ask it because I need to document. Every time you don't, I need to really document that so that when you tell me I'm so far behind, I know that it's not me. And then I understand, okay, you have restrictions on your time. How are you going to get away from that? I have a student right now that he lives in Colorado and he travels 3 or 5 hours to see his wife. They're sort of in 2 different homes, maintaining homes, and every weekend he has to travel, and that's his study time is when he's on the road. And I'm like, wow, could you ask your wife to give you just 2 weeks? I can work with you for 2 weeks. And they're trying to work through that. So hopefully by next week, after their anniversary, he will be able to dedicate 2 straight weeks and get this exam accomplished. Okay, and it's not about how much time you put in, it is how much quality training you actually deliver to yourself, whether you have a coach or whether you do it on your own. The accelerated program is really geared for individuals that studied on their own and then they tried to do an approach where they say, I'm going to save tons of money, and then they find now they're spending 3 to 4 times as much because they picked the wrong training program, or they didn't buy the right books, or a friend gave them books. Oh my God, I passed the exam, here's my books. And you find out the books are dated. So you need to make sure you have the right books. You need to make sure you have the right materials in order to be able to study for the 5th edition PMBOK PMP certification exam. If you do not have the right books and you figure, well, I'll just use the old book and I'll search on the web for the changes, that's almost like saying, I'm going to learn the old stuff and then I'm going to substitute out what's not current and learn what's current. How can you do that when you can't even study what's current to begin with? So the bottom line is, try not to cut corners because it will burn you in the end. You want to take your time and buy the right books, set up the training the right way with the right amount of time with some flexibility on the end, that if you took an 8-week program and you're not ready by 8 weeks, that you still have another 3 or 4 weeks to get it together. Don't pick your exam date and then say, oh, I've got to make this exam date, because it doesn't work that way. You don't know how fast your brain is going to pick up the material. What if somebody in your family gets sick and you have to now take some time off? So you need to think about these things and just take the training as it goes, but don't skip your training. And that's so important. Some people say, oh, I didn't feel like studying this week. That's a bad thing, because once you stop studying, your brain says, oh, she doesn't need this information, and immediately your brain starts to just say, shut down, like, I don't want to do any more studying. And you find reasons not to study. Our PMP Math and Complex Topics Overview is a coaching program. So you've studied for the PMP, but you're finding the math and some of the complex topics such as decision tree analysis, or maybe doing some of the calculations for procurement or network diagramming or earned value. That we have a workshop that's about a little over 4 hours. It's about an 80-page workbook, and we just work on every single problem. So this is not a program that somebody new can say, well, I'll just do the overview. You would need the background information. So is everybody understanding, and let me just understand everybody's level here. Who on this call, and you can put it in the chat, is a beginner? Is everybody on the call a beginner, or is someone here have already taken the training program and they're looking for a way to brush up before they take their exam? Can you put it in the chat? Okay, so some people are saying that they're new. Okay. Is anybody here looking for a refresher to prepare for their exam? Okay, so one person is looking for a refresher. So you would understand what I'm talking about when I talk about the network diagram. Some of the topics are not easy to learn on your own. They will take longer. So if you're planning on a 2-year study process, then that's possible. But if you're planning, okay, I'm going to do this in 2 months, or I'm going to do this in 3 months, but you have a lot of other restrictions on your time, it will be very, very challenging. So you need to decide, and then with that challenge, eventually you're like, you know, I don't think I want to do this. You start to find reasons not to do it. You start to find reasons why, you know what, this is not working. I'm going to find another way to get a job, and I'm just going to let go of my dream. If you have dreams of doing really great project management and you need the PMP, or you need the Agile certification, or you need green project management, sustainability management training, don't give up your dream because it takes too long, the program takes too long, or the program is involved. Just realign your timeline of getting prepared. And yeah, is it hard? This exam is hard, but the more time you put into it, the more you start to enjoy the material. The more you enjoy the material, the more you start to say, gee, let me do a little more research. I want to know more. There are people doing master's and PhD programs in project management. So what you're learning for the PMP is 35 hours. You can see that that's absolutely nothing. They take each of those knowledge areas and explode those out into areas of its own. There are people that are risk management specialists, scheduling specialists, communication specialists. So if it is that you have a passion for project management, and after you get your PMP, you're looking at scheduling, PMI has a scheduling certification, risk management, portfolio management, and the latest one, the Agile, of course, and the OPM3 certification, organizational process management. So it's becoming endless as to where project management is going. So don't just think that this PMP is the beginning and the end of it all. There is much more behind this, but you have to start at the beginning. So let's look at some more slides. Again, put your questions in the chat, and so I see some more people are commenting that they're new with PMP but not new with systems. Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. So one of the things that Holistic Project Management likes to do is to offer, we have students that are in one-on-ones and in small groups, but we'd like to have a way that we offer one class per week where everybody can come in together, see how others are answering questions. Some people are working in pharmaceuticals, some people are working in IT, some people are working in medical devices. So depending on the area where you work, it doesn't really matter. This exam is generic enough, but you can see how other people approach answering the questions. Some people have worked in really good project management areas, and some people have not worked in really good project management backgrounds. So we tend to learn off of each other. So the important thing is you want to be able to complete more in less time. So if you have a lot of time, then you would definitely turn around and just sort of take this as a slow approach. Most people are trying to get a lot of training done in a short period of time. Again, don't add additional anxiety to your training process if you don't have to. Find a way that you can get some balance, but staying focused and looking at the end destination, which is what? Passing your PMP exam. Learning the information, integrating it so that you now start to use it at work, and then making sure that you are ready to take your exam. So how do you know that you're ready? You are going to be passing mock exams, passing those exams in 2 hours, not 4 hours, and you're going to be passing them with scores in the 80%. Your first mock exam that you take, you're probably going to get something like maybe 55. Some people, I've seen them as low as 40 something. So I said, you know what, it's okay. At least we know where we're starting, and then we start to build from there. So you don't rush through the exam, but you're going to take your time. So our students are coached on how to use brain dumps. And so one of the things we do is we take a group mock exam. We take a full exam together as a group. And what I'm doing is monitoring them the whole time. What are you doing? What are you doing at hour 1, hour 2, hour 3, hour 4? I need to know what they're doing, what they're thinking. Did you take a bathroom break? We'll be talking about that in a moment. Now, you may be thinking, what does the bathroom have to do with the PMP? I did a blog on that. So those of you who know me may have read that blog already, but it has everything to do with being able to pass the exam. But this mock test experience gives me a chance to look at my students as if they were in the testing center and say, well, why didn't you take a break? Oh, I got tired, but I just kept going, and I didn't take any breaks, and I was thirsty, but I didn't get up and have any water. The whole testing environment, you're pushing your brain to the maximum. So why would you not give it some water? When you're driving on the highway, don't you have to give oil and fuel and water to your car? So why is your brain any less important? So these are things you should be thinking about, that you need to be sleeping properly. You need to not excessive drinking as you're preparing for the exam. You need to treat your brain and your body as though you're preparing for a marathon and doing all the right things to prepare for success. So here are some of the 3 tips I'd like to share with you. Our students get a whole presentation on the do's and don'ts. We have a PMP trivia that we talk about. Well, if you went to the testing center and you saw questions that you didn't even recognize, what would you do? So the first, if you had not prepared, you would be panicking. So we make sure that our students, no matter what happens, when they go to the testing center, they are calm. So a quick story, a student of mine got to the testing center, her husband dropped her off, and she did not have her birthday was that week. She didn't change her driver's license. In Massachusetts, you change your driver's license like every 5 years or something on your birthday. She didn't change the driver's license, so they technically did not let her take the test. She called her husband and said, you've got to go home and get my passport. He drove through all the traffic in Boston. She sat calmly waiting. The whole time she sat calmly waiting, other people had other issues, and they threw themselves on the floor having tantrums. You will see some of the craziest things because people have gone through a lot of stress to get to that point when they're taking their exam, and they just sometimes just lose it. It's like the final hour, and they can't hold it any longer. So one of the tips I'd like to share with you, and you can just chime in the chat. If you feel this is a tip that you could use, put yes. Schedule time off before your exam. Scheduling time off means maybe the week before your exam, take vacation time. You may say, well, I want to save my vacation. If you go to work the week of your exam, your manager means well, but your manager might say, oh, I need you to come in. Oh, your test is at noon. Why don't you come in at 8, and then you can leave at 11. You'll get to the test in time. How does that sound to you? Put it in the chat. Does that sound like a good deal for you to come into work the day of your test and then work up until the hour before your test and then rush through traffic to get to the testing center? Is that something you think that would work to your ability to, work for you to be calm and prepared for your exam? Everyone that takes the test, I had a student take the test. She hasn't yet to call me. She took the test this afternoon, and I could hear the nervousness in her voice. So she had to work. There's no way, number one, she could do a good job and then turn around and drive the car through traffic safely and get to her destination. So the important thing is take time off before your exam so that you can then strategize the best approach, and you have time to stay up late at night. And so someone is writing in the chat, they say test is game day, arrive ready and complete, ready to compete. And that's really the best opportunity for you to say, okay, I want to be ready on that day. What do I need to do? You check your ID. You want to make sure you have the appropriate clothing because testing centers can be cold. Just making sure that you're mentally and knowledge ready for that exam. Don't eat turkey during the test breaks. So you can take food into those testing centers, but you certainly can't put it around your PC. They give you a locker, And I would suggest that you make a visit to some of the local testing centers and just sort of look and see the attitude of the people coming out, look and see the setup. The setup is a glass, all the rooms, all the walls are glass, and then there's cameras. If you've ever been to Fortune-Offs or any of those top-end, high-end jewelry stores, the cameras are all on the ceilings, pointing down at different angles, catching whatever's going on in the room. So people outside of the room can see you in the room, and they can also see you on the monitor. And the reason for that is because there are people that want certification so bad they are willing to cheat to get it. They check your ID. That's because somebody might send their friend in with their ID and say, yeah, go take the test for me. Okay? Turkey actually has, I think, a protein called tryptophan that actually makes you sleepy. So those of you who are in the United States, you know that Thanksgiving we have turkey, and afterwards everybody gets all sleepy. It's not because you're full, it's because of the turkey. So make sure you're aware of the kinds of foods that you plan to take with you. You want to take foods that will give you quick energy, peanut butter, I don't know, I like string cheese and liverwurst. Take the things that you really like that give you a lot of brain power and energy and keep you motivated. Nothing like a shot of whiskey. That's not going to work, okay? Number 3, take time for bathroom breaks. Have you ever had to go to the bathroom and somebody asks you a question and you can't even talk because you're focused on not wetting your pants, you know, or worse? And so the bottom line is make time for those bathroom breaks. So by taking mock exams at home, you start to learn, well, okay, every time I take a 4-hour test, I feel like I really want to go to urinate at hour 2. You know, the thing is, if you're thirsty, you're hungry, you're tired, whatever, get up from your testing place, refresh yourself, and then come back. Now, just so you know, when you take your real test, and you should do this when you take practice tests, the clock keeps ticking. You don't put a thing and stop the clock. You don't hit a button and say, okay, I'm taking a break, stop the clock, go out for a break, go have a cigarette. That's not the real world. The real world is when you take a break, you're still losing time on your test. So make sure that if you take time off, that you then take time to, that you take the time, but you're watching how much time you're taking off. Guessing techniques. There's a benefit to guessing. You can guess on the exam. You can guess, but if it is that every time you guess the wrong answer, guess what? That's not going to work for you. The benefit of guessing, you have 4 questions. You have a 25% chance of getting it right. So the thing is, you want to make sure that you have 50% chance. So you get rid of 2 answers. Now you're down to A or B or C or D. But if all 4 answers you have no idea, the strategy, and we talked to you about testing strategies, may be to not answer that question and keep going. Okay, so there are tips that we can share with you, but because of the timing of this presentation, we could never get into every single tip to prepare you, but we do have a presentation that prepares you for testing techniques. And students that have used that has actually added a lot of calmness to their whole training process. So let's take a few moments in the few minutes we have left to look at some questions. These questions are coming from Oliver Lehman, who is a very well respected and known project manager out of Germany. So what I'd like for you to do is to participate. The classes are about not just sitting back, checking your smartphone, or maybe muting the line and then having conversation with someone else, but the classes are about engaging and understanding how to answer questions. How does this information fit with what you've done as a project manager? And if it doesn't line up, how can you make sure that this information sticks, number 1, for the test, and also sticks with you for use after you pass your exam? So let's look at this question. In a software development project, the application has been deployed in a test environment to observe the performance of the application. This is an example of which technique? The software development project, the application has been deployed in a test environment to observe the performance of the application. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Does anybody recognize any of these terms? You can say yes or no. If there's no participation, I'll move on to the next question. Maybe the next question will be a little bit easier. So SWOT analysis is looking at, when you do risk identification, you're looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. Design of experiments. Design of experiments is looking at possibly scheduling or risk and using a simulator to be able to come up with all the combinations of the way that a certain experiment or project can be managed. Let me move down to Delphi technique for a moment. The Delphi technique is a technique that allows you to do interviewing techniques with subject matter experts, but you want to avoid groupthink. Groupthink is when everybody picks the answer. So let's say that there's somebody on the call named Maddie, and Maddie's always smart, and Maddie always gives the right answer. But the problem is that Maddie, no one else wants to look stupid, so they don't answer. So they say, oh yeah, Maddie says yes, so we say yes. You want to have creative ideas come forth, so the way to do that is possibly using the Delphi technique to have everyone give their ideas for voting or for decision-making processes. You want to be able to have lots of ideas. And then when you look at the Monte Carlo simulator, you're looking at thousands or hundreds of thousands of performances or the outcomes, looking at the probability for cost or schedule on individual tasks. So they look at this Monte Carlo simulator as looking at the positives and negatives of scheduling, or looking at cost opportunities for a particular project. So based on what I've given you, what answers can we eliminate right now? Can we eliminate A? So when you're answering questions, you want to be able to say which answers do not fit. So they're talking here, test environment to observe the performance of the application. And they're asking what kind of technique is this? So the only two techniques that we're talking about that I think would fit, right, that's correct. We can get rid of D, and I believe we can get rid of A, the SWOT analysis. So we're left with design of experiments and the Monte Carlo technique. And from what the PMBOK says, and you need to always use the PMBOK, go to the glossary, they're talking Monte Carlo simulation is looking at the outcomes of use that are then used to generate the probability or distribution of the project as a whole. So they're looking here to observe the performance of the application. Now let's look at the design of experiments. When you look at design of experiments, the definition here is statistical method for identifying which factors may influence specific variables of a product or process under development or in production. So I would tend to think that the design of experiments more fits with this answer. Does everyone agree, or does someone else have some comments on design of experiments and Monte Carlo technique? There's quite a few people on the line, so please put your information in the chat. Okay, so someone's asking for a drill down on the definition. Are you asking for more details on which definition? On B, design of experiments, one of the ways to get more details is to do a Google search. Because the PMBOK gives you limited information on that. And so what happens is then you're sort of left to, and the reason for that is, and thank you for agreeing with the design of experiments. What happens is PMI is expecting that you would have had really great experience in your jobs as project managers, that you would have had experience working with more senior project managers. And so what I can do is maybe send you some links of maybe a project management dictionary that's online. Some of the tools that are out there that we use in class have search engines in the tools that allow you to do more research. But part of your studying, the information is not going to just sit there and be totally spelled out to you and you just read it. You have to say, okay, what's that? And I appreciate you asking for more information, and you're going to say, gee, what's that? And then you're going to have to go and do a little more research. And when you feel comfortable with the information is when you see this kind of question and you're able to answer it. So let's move on to number 2. I don't want to run too much over, and I want you guys to have a chance to put, I'm going to skip this question because this is going to take a little bit of math. I thought some of the people coming onto the call were a little more experienced project managers. Most of the people on the call are new project managers. When we talk about communications, project managers are communicating over 90%. And so the thing is coming up with a communications management plan, coming up with a way to know who you need to speak with, how many times, in what methods. Do you need to send email? Do you need to talk with them? Do you need to send them a document to download? Do you need to put something in SharePoint? So it's looking at all the ways you communicate. And if you have a very large team, you need to be able to understand who do you do what kind of communications with and who do you not communicate as much with. The bottom line, you're communicating with everybody, but not everybody needs to know everything. And so this communications channel formula, this is a formula, and this question addresses that, but I'm not going to go into any more details. It will take a little bit of time to get you guys to do the math and then to have that discussion. Let's look at this last question. After schedule change, the float is calculated to be less than 0. What does this tell us? Does anybody know about float? Could you put it in the chat? Have you heard about float, total float, free float? It's okay if you haven't. I tell my students it's okay to get questions wrong before the exam so that during the exam they don't get them wrong. Okay, so we haven't. Okay, so float talks about how much extra time or how much slack is in your network diagram. So you have a schedule for the work that needs to be done from the beginning of the project to the end. And float talks about how much extra time is there based on the critical path. The critical path is the path that has no float. So the short end of it is that this project is going to be late because it has a negative float. If it had a positive float, that shows there's extra time. The critical path has no float, which is 0. This project now has a negative float, so this project is actually going to be late. Okay, so the way I'm explaining these questions, are you guys getting it? Some of you are not participating in the call, so I'm not sure if you're still on the call or if this material is gone totally on a level that's a little bit too high for your purposes at this time. But did everybody understand those 3 questions, the discussions that needs to happen as you answer the questions? Okay, great, great, great. And you know, it's something that you learn as you go, that you answer the questions and then you say, you know what, I'm not getting it. Then you have to do a little bit more research. If you're not familiar, there's tons of definitions. I would say 55% of the exam is definitions. What's a project? What's a program? What's a portfolio? What's rolling wave planning? What's a stakeholder? What's the communications plan formula? What's earned value? I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on for hours. and it would never end because you're looking at the terms and definitions. So as you read the material, I suggest you do a lot of highlighting. And that, number one, you need to make sure you have a coach or now some people pick a study team. You pick a study group and all of you are at the same level. I look at that as two sticks holding themselves up. You know, how can you teach somebody and they don't know anything, you don't know anything? You want to be in a situation where if you have a study group that you have maybe somebody come in that has the knowledge that can help add the value of, make sure you look here in the PMBOK. It'll take you a while to do it as a team, study team, where everybody's new to project management and you're working on it on your own. But if you have somebody that oversees and says, well, didn't you see this question? Can't you see how the answers are lined up and they didn't line up the right way and that's why you got that answer wrong? You know, it's all about how much time do you have. If you have 2 years to work on this, but just remember, the exam is probably, they're getting ready to probably make another announcement about a change, probably for next July. Don't quote me on it, but every 2.5 years that exam changes. And they haven't, it changed last July. So right now, here next month is July. So I think something's going to be coming up where they'll say something is going to change in the books because they keep rotating those books. They don't want anyone to get too familiar with a book that somebody can sit there and memorize and then turn around and get 100% on the exam. So you need to understand your fears. What is your fear about taking tests? What is the timing that you have to prepare for your test? And what are you going to do about it? Okay? Having unreasonable expectations on yourself will add to your anxiety and will actually lead you to fail the exam, even if you're prepared. You need to be reasonable with yourself and say, look, I'm not ready. If you don't have the experience for the application, I would suggest that you do not submit that application if you do not have the experience. If you're not prepared, take the time and say, okay, I'm going to do some extra project work, even if you have to do project work after and outside of your work. And someone mentioned they have fears about math. I mean, so what is your fear on math? Has math ever beat you up? Probably mentally you feel like you've been beaten up. But I think a lot of the math problems people have is because they had bad math teachers in elementary and high school and college. So if you had someone that could explain it to you, like the math review, I've had students that say they hate math, and when I finish with them, they love it. And then they turn around and they can't believe they said that they loved math. They couldn't believe the word love and math was in the same sentence. So it's all about your approach, and it's about how much time do you have. You cannot turn around and go from fearing math to loving math in 1 week. That's not going to happen. It's about taking your time and understanding. If you understand the background of the topic and why it's important in project management, how it's used, and then how those numbers play a part in reporting to senior management and how you need to keep the team involved, it just makes sense. And then the math numbers, it becomes a step-by-step approach. So we have lots of tricks and techniques to help students study and get the material mastered. But it's all about how much time are you, we can't do it for you. We cannot go in and take the exam for you. So we suggest that you, number one, set up a one-on-one discussion with me or someone on my team to sort of walk through, why are you doing this PMP? Are you doing it because your friend did it and they have their PMP and now you're like, oh, I don't want to be without a PMP. This is not the certification you want to go after just to show you have it because someone else has it. It takes a lot out of you. And if you're not driven for the right reason, guess what? You're not going, no matter how much you want it, because you're wanting it for the wrong reason, you will not get it. Okay, so if you have goals that you want to achieve, that's going to inspire you as you go through your studying. You hit those roadblocks where you're up late at night studying and you're like, oh my God, my head is hurting. Then you think, okay, I'm going to be able to make $20,000 more in salary once I get my PMP. I'm going to get that position that I really wanted. I'm going to be able to travel and do this and that. So if it is you have plans, it will give you a way to say, okay, the suffering is worth it. But if you don't have any plans for what's going to happen after you get your PMP, and we walk you through that during the one-on-one discussion, is we talk with you and find out, what are your plans, and help you transition that knowledge and understand how it's connected to passing the exam. Okay, so what we'd like to do, if you set up the one-on-one discussion, we'll give you a copy of our PMP trivia document. And if you confirm your training, we'll also book you for 2 one-on-one free coaching sessions. And that's sessions like after you've studied and you're ready to take your exam. So just a one-on-one sit down and review materials or go through some extra math. So this is aside from some of the other programs that we're offering. So our offer is going to expire on Friday. So Friday is the 13th, Friday the 13th. And so we have 10 weeks of a dedicated training program. And so we're offering this PMP training only until Friday the 13th, and that is going to be discounted to $500. The only issue is we have to have the class filled. We normally charge $14.25 for our PMP program, so that gives you the 35 hours plus the math review, plus the review of a mock exam and working on the brain dump, and we even help you with your application. But the only way that we can take the hit and the loss is that we have to have our classes filled. So if you have friends that are looking to get their PMP and, don't make money the differentiator. If it is that I'm a little too pushy, like, you need to study and you need to get your homework done and you don't want an instructor like that, but you like the $500 price, don't pick me because you like the price, but you don't like my style. I am goal-driven, so if you say, I need to pass the exam by July 1st, all I see is July 1st, and you will go, your knees will be bleeding and everything, but you will get, July 1st, you will be sitting in front of the PC at the Prometric Center taking your exam. So if you need someone to lie to you, I will never lie to you. I will tell you, if you're not ready, I will tell you you're not ready. And you may want to cry about it. So the thing is, you need to be prepared, you need to have a plan in place, and we work towards that. And the plan is pretty much the same plan I use for everyone, but it's tweaked based on your learning ability. Some people tell me, well, I read slow. Okay, then we'll be reading a little bit slower. There's also, this program can go more than 10 weeks. It's really for the whole summer that people will be reading the book and giving reviews of this PMP book. They need the PMBOK, but there's an additional book. And you'll be actually doing homework assignments, but it will not be as intense as if you took just the regular program. And then after all of that's over, then you'll come back together in a group class to do a final review and prep for the exam. So what I'd like to do is get some feedback from anybody in the chat with any questions that you have. I know I try to be very thorough, but I know that some of you may be having some questions. So we're 3 minutes over, and I apologize. Any questions from the peanut gallery? Anybody out there with additional comments? Okay, someone said that they are interested in signing up, and so that is great. So set up a one-on-one coaching session with me. Contact John Roy at Holistic, Johnnroy, and I'll put it in the chat. He's one of my assistants at Holistic, HOLISTICPMC.com. John Roy at holisticpmc.com, and just tell them you're interested in setting up a consultation one-on-one, and we can get that done this week. Classes, you need to really contact John before Friday. The sooner you set it up, the easier it is to get the documents out to you and then confirm the class. Again, this one class for 500, we need to have 10 to 15 students in it. And the one-on-one is not in a group, so you can tell me, your innermost secret related to what it is, the challenges that you have. If you don't have the experience, I'm going to let you know that this makes absolutely no sense to take a PMP course, to take the PMP, and PMI rejects you because you don't have the requirements. I will need to see your resume. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter if it's not neat. I need to see your resume so that I can help you be prepared for your exam. I see there's questions, and somebody says, what if you don't what if you don't pass the exam, or what if you don't have the experience? I'm not sure what that question was about. Thank you so much for the session. I'm looking forward to some of the programs. That is wonderful. Thank you. Setting up the one-on-one. Excellent. Send that note to John Roy at holisticpmc.com. And make sure you check out our website at holisticpmc.com. And we have some great information there to help you feel more confident about what you're planning ahead. Okay, having enough students. If I do not get enough students, which I don't think is going to be the problem, if I don't get enough students, then we're back to looking at some of our older rates. I can still discuss those rates with you guys one-on-one. It'll be less than the $14.25 because you've come on the teleseminar, but it can't be down to $500. So if you'd like, make time to talk with me about that during the teleseminar. Send me an email. Let me know your concerns. Just so you know, PayPal has a it's called Pay Me Later, Bill Me Later program. And so if it is that you are concerned about costs and trying to balance everything, you don't have to pay them for 6 months with no interest. So that might be a way to go. If some of you are working and you're like trying to balance all the expenses and everything, is to turn around and just go through PayPal. They will pre-approve you, and they'll pay for your training class. You can use them for your PMP exam fees too and everything. And then this way you'll be PMP certified before you even owe them that money. And hopefully I can share with you a presentation that we do to help you increase your salary. There's methods to go about that, getting raises from your managers. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much. I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I'm assuming everybody is all set. And again, thank you so much for being on the call today, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. Have a great evening.